Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video on FOMO because with what's going on with the banners in Genshin and Star Rail, it's crazy at the moment. So if you're not in the loop, then just to sum things up, in the current patch Genshin 5.3, we just had Moika and Seat Lally. A lot of people are excited about their strength and there's all these showcases. But there is a lot of FOMO going on since this is the first time Genshin puts both of the new characters on at the same time in the same duration instead of separating them. And then instead of, like, for example, Seat Lally being in the second half, phase 2, you just got a bunch of reruns, just a bunch of characters, and during those reruns is actually when we'll be getting most of our free pulls this patch. And it's also conveniently Chinese New Year, and then on top of that, let's just call it for what it is, Moika is intentionally designed to work well with the recent Natlan supports. And as you may know, a lot of her best supports are basically everywhere except her own banner. You've got Chevreuse here in September, Shilonan after, Auroran after that. Then Moika is with Bennett, but then you've got Seat Lally on the other banner at the same time. And then you've got the reruns where the Chevreuse is here again. And then finally, in their live stream, they also teased all these other upcoming characters that you could be pulling for and saving for instead. That's Genshin. Then in Star Rail, in 3.0, which is coming out very soon, they are doing an unprecedented 8 banners in a patch. One of them including the Herta, who is super hyped at the moment because she's the Erudition Emanator, who's been with us since the beginning of the game, which basically means she has the power of one of the Aeons. The last Emanator we had was Acheron, and we all know how hyped she was. And just yesterday, we've now even got creator showcases showcasing Herta's strength. So with Moika, you don't absolutely need her premium team. I know many people are justifying it by saying you can still clear with a scuff team, maybe something like Kachina, Diona. Might be quote unquote more free to play friendly. And with all respect to Iron to Lose, I like most of his videos, but for example, a video like this still shows that it's a lot weaker than the intended premium investments. The unique damage is a lot lower, even though it might still look impressive, which it still is. But if you compare multipliers like this, that might not be the most useful thing because this doesn't show how many melts you can get. And for example, Diona's cryo app is not even that good by itself, and you might even have to be skipping Moika's skill so you can actually get some decent amount of melts, and even then you're not melting anywhere near as much as Seat Lally. And to be honest, I think it's worth comparing the alternatives. So like with Leaflet, if you don't have his premium teammates, how big is the drop off? Or with Mualani, if you don't have these 5-star teammates, let's say you just got a bunch of free teammates, how big is the drop off? Let's be honest, with these characters there's hardly a drop off compared to what Moika gets. So I don't want to focus too much on this video. Is it possible to clear endgame with scuffed teams like this? Absolutely. I help scuffed viewer accounts clear all the time, but you absolutely are incentivized to pull for, let's say, the full package to get what was her advertised strength. And in doing so, you have to pull in a lot of banners back to back to back. You have to invest quite a lot into this team. And as someone who used to play Honkai Impact 3rd with its crazy FOMO and power creep, even though that game had PvP and Genshin doesn't, this recent banner tactic left a sour taste in my mouth since it was so unlike Genshin and reminded me of Honkai Impact 3rd. Anyway, what I've been thinking about is that there is always going to be hype. Honestly, with every creator, it's literally content creators' jobs to hype you up and get you hyped about the new things, the new characters. Now, I'm not saying any CC is being disingenuous or they have an agenda to get you to pull for the new characters. It's not about that at all. But I'm just saying, as a content creator, you are naturally going to be positive. But my stance on the matter, I think you don't need to get the strongest thing right now, because the way these games are going, the way this power creep and all that is going, there's going to be a new strongest thing in 6 months anyway, so who really cares? And personally, my stance has always been you should pull who you like, just make sure to properly build them and try to pull teammates that will help them shine. And the overall point in this video, I think, is especially with how power creep has been happening in both Genshin and Star Rail for the past year. Like I said, the next hype will always be changing, and like I said, it's not any one content creator being disingenuous or having agendas. It's nothing like that. But Moika, Seat Lally, the Herta, the hype will go from these guys to potentially something completely different with different DPSs who have completely different teammates, and then you'll be encouraged to pull 2 or 3 new supports to support that character. You know what, let me just show you some examples of this. Okay, let's look at Hoot Out. So remember when Farina first came out, let's start at this. Let's say this was the hyped Hu Tao team. You could play Jean, you could play Bennett, whatever. You might even also have been playing a VV Vape team. But what happened is that the new trend became the plunge teams with Shen Yun. And then all of a sudden, the trend was that her C1 was now useless because she's a plunge character. So you don't need to get her C1 anymore, just invest in this new plunge team. But then a couple months later, then Chilonen came out, and then there were calculations showing that this might be slightly more DPS. So all of a sudden, we're going back. We're going in a full circle back to her normal charge attack team. So all that plunge stuff with Hu Tao about how it improved her AoE, it made her less reliant on the C1, it made her more flexible, all that kind of just went out the window. And then when Chilona came out, people went back to the charge attack teams, and you don't really hear that much discussion about the plunge anymore. Kind of similar thing with Navia. People started off with this when she first came out, maybe Farina instead, but then she also got the plunge hype. These teams were less focused on her skill damage. There was some cool plunges, some nice AoE, maybe you even got Chiori to finish the team off. But then Chilona came out, and all of a sudden you don't want your Shenyun anymore, you go back to Bennett. And then this was the team that people was talking about. But then Moika comes out, and then now you don't care about your Farina. You basically don't care about that entire plunge team that you invested in. And the thing is, this is kind of a full circle, because this is potentially an upgrade to Xiangling, but it's kind of similar to just playing Xiangling, but Moika has a nuke instead. But you're going back to the original playstyle. We can look at Chlorand, for example. I know when Chlorand first came out, majority of the focus was on her Dendro teams, her aggravate teams, synergies with Fischl, and a lot of people invested in teams like this. And not only that, but a lot of people were encouraged not to bother getting her signature set, but instead, because Thundering Fury has decent synergy in the Dendro teams, a lot of people were encouraged to grind out this set instead. Some people were playing Overload teams back then, but it definitely wasn't as popular and it was seen as weaker. But then I remember when characters like Shilonen and Kazuha came out, there was a lot of discussion about Chlorand in Electro Charge teams. Completely different team here. You could play Kazuha. There's also stuff like Auroran, maybe Fischl. But then now when Moika comes out, no one even really cares about those old teams anymore. Pretty much all the comparisons people are talking about is whether Moika is an upgrade over Xiangling, or whether Auroran is an upgrade over Kujo Sara. But as I said before, it's a full circle. You could have been playing a team like this from the start, and then Moika is an upgrade, but you could have dodged all the other investment if you wanted to just focus on your Chlorand from the beginning. Last example we can talk about is like Neuvillette. Now this was his most popular team a couple of months ago, but then everyone was hyped when Shilonen came out, and then you could invest in this Celestia killer team. Now the question is, how did we go from this being the Celestia killer team to all of a sudden you actually replace two of these characters with two new supports, and now this is the new team? You literally replaced three of the teammates that he was perfectly good in already. But does this team remind you of anything? Do you know what this team is? Is this team with makeup and a fresh coat of paint. This is the original Leaflet vape team that I covered in the first few days it came out, and this has always been a powerful team that speedrunners have been using for a long time. Again, there's a lot of investments, but at the end of the day you're kind of going in full circle. And do you see my point? It's not that these investments are bad, it's not that these teams are bad, it's just that truthfully, if you always fall for the latest trend, you basically spend primos for no reason. But like I said, it makes sense why this happens. In fact, I think just naturally it's almost impossible for a content creator, even myself, to relate to normal players and normal players making decisions. Just like as I was explaining before, as a content creator, the more characters you pull, potentially the more content and videos you can make. Even myself, where I actively don't make videos on every character, I'm still naturally inclined to always be talking about something new. So I think we are naturally going into these games with the mindset of finding something to talk about, whereas the average normal player is more likely to just focus on who they like.
This is coming from a guy who has acquired every single character in the game, E2s, S1s, and he's sitting here trying to tell free-to-plays and budget players how they should be. It's like a millionaire telling a guy from the hood, he ain't struggling. It's like, brother.
And again, no disrespect to any content creators, I'm just saying this is just a natural thing that happens with everyone. And overall, I always thought this is kind of where the idea for always pull new characters rather than weapons comes from. You know, that whole horizontal investment saying. I'm not saying that normal players who don't make content can't come to the conclusion of preferring characters over weapons. You definitely can, but I do think maybe some portion of that is influenced from content creators, and content creators who probably would have more content if they pull more characters rather than just investing in the same one. Let me get to Star Rail quickly. So in Star Rail, you have to be even more careful than Genshin because you also invest into team archetypes. So if you pulled for Firefly, then you want to invest in her break teams and teammates. Ling Sha, Gallagher. Luckily with Firefly, main character and Gallagher were free, but you still had to invest into a run mate. But if you like Fei Xiao, then it's a completely different team kind of that you have to invest into. Again, I'm free to play. These are not the best examples because we also had another free character here, March 7th. You could also run into issues the other way where, let's say you only have one healer, but both your break team and your follow-up team want the same character. But in Star Rail, I'm of the opinion that even if you're free to play like me, you should pull for your favorites, but try to get their light cone if they're a DPS. You can see here I do skip a ton of characters, but the DPS that I do pull, my favorite characters that I invest into, I made sure to save up and get their light cones. You can see I've got quite a few of them, and then a bunch of standard 5 stars. So yeah, that's a perfect example. Let's look at my Star Rail account. Now, I'm definitely not a pro Star Rail player, nor do I have any future sight or Monday night quarterback stuff, but I am free to play and I do clear all the endgame since release. But as you can see, especially once I go into this destruction tab, I pretty much skipped majority of the meta characters in the first year of the game. Got all these skips here, even skipped Silver Wolf, all these skips here. You just don't get that much primos as a free to play. Plus, I preferred going for my favorites at the time, which was Topaz and Kafka. And at the time, putting Topaz, skipping these characters, people would joke around saying that I bricked my account. But looking back, it didn't take too long for Dunhung, Jingliu, Silver Wolf, even Sparkle, all these characters that I skipped to become old news. And the funniest thing is, I bet if you ask someone just before 2.0 who the 2 weakest limited 5 stars were, I swear there's a good chance they would probably say Jingyuan and Topaz. But a year later, just as we're about to go into 3.0, along with Runmate, you probably could say that Jingyuan and Topaz, those are the top 3 most relevant old characters. So why would you care to jump on all these trains when you could just be happy with what you have, but then you could wait and jump on the train later on when it's actually a character you like and actually a team you like? And the odds are that would be the next power creep anyway. Like with Topaz, I bid my time. I didn't care too much about the free doctor ratio. I didn't get his weapon, just had him on whatever. I bid my time, and then I got Fei Xiao. I liked Fei Xiao, and all of a sudden this was the new hype team. This was a new hype team, and I managed to skip everything in between. The main takeaway, I dare say, if you're correctly investing or vertically investing into an older character, you're less likely to feel the issues of power creep than someone who always chases the new toy but has them on scuffed builds or scuffed teams. Like, I didn't particularly like Zhao Cho. I was very happy with my Acheron. I liked Pela as well, but I didn't mind Zhao Cho in the story. He was alright. I got him to ensure my Acheron would have a bit more longevity. I also got her light cone at the time, whereas when Acheron first came out, there was a lot of hype even if you didn't get her light cone. If I skipped her light cone, if I skipped Zhao Cho, chances are power creep wise my Acheron investment would be in the mud. And funny enough, I did actually make a Star Rail video on this topic after Dunhung came out, like well over a year ago, where it was how every new character was hyped and broken. And like I keep saying, it's not about attacking any other creators, it's just the nature of the community to be constantly moving on to the next character to hype up. And again, I'm not a fortune teller, but I even said it's recency bias. In 1.4, Jingliu and Topaz will be the new big thing, and then in 1.5 it will be the characters after them, and so on. Maybe all characters are pretty good. This was obviously before power creep, so obviously what's happened in the past year, all the characters are a lot stronger, but it still applies, funnily enough. If all the new characters are good and they just get better and better, there is no need to fall into the cycle of hype. Which brings me to my final point, which is that this isn't the end. Very quickly there will be something else to talk about. Aglaya isn't the end, Herta isn't the end, Mawika and Silali aren't the end. Just don't forget, the same people that convinced you to get Arlecchino because of how overpowered she was, a few months later they probably convince you to pull Mawika because she's also overpowered. Just like they might have been raving about Shenyun plunge teams, but then a month later you barely even hear about that now, and then Shilonen is the new hype. in completely different teams. Plus, Genshin already teased Skirk, who is obviously this character here, and all of this stuff. If Skirk comes out in a few months, if she's a DPS, let's be honest, she's got nothing to do with Natlan. What if she's designed to work with a completely new system for the next region? Then all these Natlan toys that you got invested into will be old news. All of a sudden, you'll be building completely new characters. So overall, I'm not saying don't pull for these characters. I'm saying make sure you really like and want to play them, and that is priority. This is a gacha game after all. There is no PvP. Me personally, I did pull Moika and Lali, but I didn't get Moika's signature weapon, and that's because I got her mostly for the sub DPS role, because there are a lot of characters who I do like Mualani, Navia, Clorand, Ganyu, and so on. There's a lot of characters who I do like where I think Moika could work pretty well in. And as for my Star Rail account, I mean, as you can see here, I've been skipping the last few characters and I've saved a lot for the Herta. But I'm getting the Herta not because of power, but I'm getting her because this witch vibe, it just hits the right spot for me. I like it. I've been saving for her for a while, but I'm not getting her for the hype. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this discussion. Obviously, I don't want to be like preachy. I'm not trying to be preachy or anything, or think I have the answers. I don't have the answers, but I do think that sometimes is easy, especially as a content creator, to get caught up in the hype. And I really think like FOMO is a real thing in these games. And with the past year, I also think power creep is a real thing in these games, which means FOMO shouldn't really matter, which means you should only be getting these characters if you like them, because there's always going to be a stronger team. Plus, as I said before, if you correctly invest in your teams and characters, if you learn how to play them, if you build them nicely, get some nice pieces that you can flex, that will give you longevity rather than constantly chasing the new thing but running out of primos, running out of stamina to build them, running out of gear to put them with. Anyway, those are just my thoughts for now. Hope you enjoyed the video.